Hi, Paige here, the 1 Foot Gamer. How's it going? I'm doing great. Thanks to all my new subscribers. Channel's growing at an awesome speed. That's awesome. In previous videos, I've looked at what effect low-level wizards can have on the world and their little nightmares. What medium-level wizards can do that's even more terrifying. Now we're going to talk about your high-level wizards, your archmages, the guys who can cast spells of level 6 and above. And in honor of that, I'm wearing my Rick and Morty hat because Rick is kind of like a science archmage, and also wearing these glasses because high-level wizards, they got to keep a low profile to stay alive. And because there's something going on with my right eye, it doesn't look great. So your low and your medium-level wizards can absolutely rock the world of men, can subtly control society, and otherwise accomplish nearly anything. However, your high-level wizard sort of moved above all that. Yeah, he could play the king as his pawn, but why would he care? He wields more power than the king does already. Thus, he's ready to turn his attention towards even more powerful magic, or manipulating or being involved in creatures even more powerful than, you know, your normal human level thing. So we're going to start looking at the 6th level spells and above and looking at the ones that are your real world changers. I'm going to be looking at the Rules Cyclopedia versions of these spells. That is the all-in-one Beck-Me Basic Expert Companion Master Set D&D hardcover book that came out in the early 90s. I like to use that version for things like this because it's the most compact version of the D&D rules. Everything in it tends to be in most other versions of D&D. And it tends to contain all the important stuff. Your other versions of the game are going to have longer spell lists, but this got most of the good stuff. Now, your high-level wizards are like fragile little gods. They've got to maintain secrecy or surround themselves with completely trusted allies in order to function and to stay alive. Now, a high-level wizard can solve almost any problem, achieve almost any task. However, they're incredibly vulnerable if surprised or overwhelmed. Take your 10th level wizard, D&D, AD&D, whatever, with a mild constitution bonus, he's going to have about 32 hit points. 20th level one, only going to have 42. Note, some 3rd and 4th level fighters have 42 hit points. This is the 20th level character. And even the 36th level one, which is your max level for your classic D&D, is going to have around 58. Well, really only AD&D and can theoretically go up to that high level. Usually it's only the basic D&D series that actually tends to play the game higher than 20th level. And those hit point totals are very easy to overcome. Might be overcomable with one magic missile, or one casting of magic missile, or maybe 2 wizards casted at once, one big bite from a dragon. So, one of the constant problems a high-level wizard is going to have is simply staying alive in the first place. Any high-level wizard is going to have enemies. They can be earned or they can be unearned, because the sheer fact that powerful wizard exists is going to get into the craw of someone else who is, maybe they're powerful, maybe they're not, but it's going to get on their nerves. They won't want that wizard around. And the more powerful the wizard, the more plans, contingencies, and secret alliances they are likely to maintain. Thus, more and more of the high-level wizard spell list is focused on keeping the wizard alive. The low-level spells pretty much already solve all of your attack and defend and change things problem. So your higher-level spells have a big focus on keeping that wizard alive. First, let's look at your 6th level spells. First real banger up is Anti-Magic Shell. This spell creates an invisible barrier, stopping all spells and spell effects from affecting the caster, even the wizard's own spells. This lasts for 2 hours, and only the caster or a wish spell can take it down. Now, why would you want this spell? This spell basically shuts down any assassination attempts from rival casters that the wizard was not prepared to stop otherwise. Wizard casts this spell with his first action when he realizes he's overwhelmed with enemy casters, and he lets his minions and followers hold off the opposing caster while he just runs away. Next up, Disintegrate. This is a save or die spell. Spells that can defeat an opponent who fail a save show up as much lower levels, I believe first. However, this spell is a real all-star because it can specifically destroy things like entire sailing ships with no savings throw. Doesn't matter how big and powerful that naval ship is, all the wizard has to do is get within range of it and cast Disintegrate, and suddenly there is no ship. Just a bunch of crew and cargo falling into the ocean. Now, if it's something like a fortress, however, they have said that Disintegrate spell only disintegrates a 10-foot cube. But hey, that still puts a big hole in the wall. Or if you disintegrate the right 10-foot cube, you take the entire tower down. Next up, Invisible Stalker. This is a world changer. You could do an entire video about Invisible Stalker. This spell is going to summon a totally invisible 8-hit die humanoid monster that will perform a single stated task for the caster. If the task is too difficult or takes too long, they will try to pervert the task, especially if the wizard has left it open, much like a wish spell. But they still make perfect accessions, and the wizard can dispatch one of those every day per 6th level spell lot they can use. They don't even have to be anywhere near the target. Or even, they don't even have to know where the target is. So let's say, you've got a problem with King Munchkin in Munchkin Land, far away. And you're capable of casting 3 6th level spells per day. You can send 3 Invisible Stalkers per day after the king. And that means he's going to have a constant barrage of Invisible Stalkers showing up at inopportune times trying to kill him. Eventually, they'll probably get him. Not only do they make incredible assassins, they also make incredible thieves. And there are some things that Invisible Stalkers aren't going to be able to kill. Maybe King Dalrock, he's a 27th level fighter, and he can fight off Invisible Stalkers with his bare hands. And he might have to do so because he's not going to be able to stop Invisible Stalkers from stealing every single one of his magic items one at a time. I honestly can't believe I've never seen using Invisible Stalkers to steal things discussed before, because it is a very straightforward and easy use of the spell. Shouldn't be a big issue as far as the Stalker getting mad or wanting to pervert it. And also, even if you cannot defeat your opponent with Invisible Stalker because they're too powerful, what you can do is you can go after everyone around them that isn't powerful enough. Now, that's quite an evil thing to do, unless it's a bad guy and it's a whole evil organization, but it's possible. Your next up is Projected Image. This is going to create an illusion of the caster up to 240 feet away, and all spells cast by the caster seem to come from that illusion. And this lasts for an hour or until touched or struck with a melee weapon. This should not be a 6th level spell. The only reason it made this list is because it can be an incredibly defensive part of a carefully orchestrated plan, or could be part of an escape plan. Say like the evil overlord is, overseeing the wedding of his evil son, Duke Frodo, and the evil princess, Garangela. And this is all happening out in a big public place, and there's all the evil overlord's evil friends are all attending there. And the wizard can just mill into the crowd, cast his spell, Projected Image, to create an image of himself up there high on the highest tower, out of melee range of anyone. And then he can start doing whatever he wants, casting whatever spells he wants. He won't seem to be casting any spells. It'll be the projected image that'll seem to be casting them. He'll just seem to be hanging out in the crowd. Everybody's going after the image while he's getting spell after spell after spell out. Pretty good, right? Next up, Stone to Flesh / Flesh to Stone. Now, you can defeat opponents with a savings throw at much lower levels, but this one has alternate uses. Say you've got an enemy who has a habit of being raised from the dead, somehow or some way. You can keep that from happening by petrifying them and keeping them instead. They're not dead, they're petrified. They won't raise. They can't be raised. They won't be able to be reincarnated because they're not dead. You don't even have to display this petrified enemy if you don't want to. You can bury all the statues in your backyard, or if you're more paranoid, you can keep them chained up underwater in your moat. The reason why you're chaining them up is so if somehow they get unpetrified, they still drown. Or you can just use it to store charmed minions or various monsters for later use. Oh, you don't need that charmed fire giant anymore. Be ashamed to waste. It's pretty hard to get close to a fire giant and get him to fail that save. So turn him into a statue until you need him again. No time will have passed for him when he comes out, so he should still be charmed. Because he gets his savings throw, once per week of his time. You can just save monsters of various abilities in your courtyard. They may not even be charmed. You just might want them there. And unpetrify them as needed. Petrify a few gorgons. Stick them in your front yard there. And, army comes along, unpetrify them. Then let them fight the army. Got a couple honorable mentions for 6th level. Not quite as good as they would seem. You've got your death spell. This kills, I think, 6 to 36 hit dice worth of creatures. Maximum hit dice, I believe, of 6. Could be totally wrong there. I'm going from memory on that. But here's the thing. It solves the same problem as Fireball, but it's twice the level, and it's actually worse in some ways because those who make their saves will be totally undamaged. This is a much better bad guy spell to cast against the players than for the players to cast themselves because it creates the kind of tension and fear in the players that a Fireball would not create, even though the Fireball is a more effective spell. This is one I'm probably pronouncing wrong. Geese. This forces a character to perform or avoid a stated action. But what makes it of little use to the players is that the victim knows they're compelled and they can speak about that fact to anyone. So that makes it of much less use to the players. It's more of a bad guy spell. More of a spell to cast on the players than for the players to cast on somebody else. However, it could be useful in helping to secure the loyalty of followers. Your loyal followers, your very loyal knights who are pledged to you, they might be willing to take the G's on themselves to never lie to you or to never, to always report anything they see. Something like that. Next up in honorable mention, reincarnation. Bring others back from the dead in a new body. This drops the honorable mention because it's not useful to the wizard himself. He can't reincarnate himself because he can't cast spells while he's dead. And a wizard is probably unlikely to want to be reincarnated instead of cloned or raised because the reincarnation, especially in your basic D&D, can bring the wizard back in a form that is no longer able to be a wizard. Stone form. This is one of many construction spells. I probably won't mention the rest of them. You can use this to slowly build dungeons and statues and such. However, here's the thing. You only get to make like one little section of wall for a casting of this 6th level spell. It's going to take a lot of castings of this 6th level spell to build yourself a dungeon or a castle or anything of the like. And any character capable of casting this spell can likely leverage nearly unlimited wealth on their own and just have the structure built the old-fashioned way rather than spending years, depending on how many times per day they can cast this spell, casting it. Just not worth it. Next up, weather control. Control the weather. This is of your greatest use during mass combat, but the fact that the caster has to maintain concentration on it ruins it. There's a lot more high-level wizard could be doing in mass combat, but besides concentrating continually so it keeps raining, or that keeps being high winds. Not worth it. Alright, before we get to the 7th level spells, let's talk about the Wizard's Tower, Keep, Dungeon, or other abode. Powerful wizards who don't want to continually stay hidden and anonymous, they need a safe place to dwell, and by the time a wizard can cast 7th level spells, he's going to start having access to many of those spells needed to make a place like that secure. That includes the various construction spells that didn't make this video because of their limited use, along with a lot of trap type spells. And Wizard might also choose to make his publicly known abode or tower a ruse. It's nothing but a series of death traps while he actually resides somewhere else nearby in secret. Maybe the caretaker who lives at the end of the field on the wizard's lot, maybe that's actually the wizard. The guy in the little shack. Or maybe he's got advertises the tower as the place that he lives, but he actually lives in a dungeon complex with an entrance that nobody else can even see that's close by. It's a lot safer. Alright, first 7th level spell, Charm Plants. What's cool about this spell is it has a 6-month duration. Any caster capable of casting this spell is just going to surround their home or fortress with loyal plants to spy on going on or to entangle those who approach. It doesn't give the plants the ability to uproot themselves and move or anything like that, but it's still pretty useful. Now, plants apparently do sleep in winter, so it doesn't have any effect in winter. However, the caster can go adventure during the winter. Be out of the area if absolutely need be. Next up, create normal monsters. Now, this lasts for 10 minutes, but it allows monsters of equal hit die to the caster's level, and that could be very useful during those 10 minutes. It can't create monsters with special abilities, however that leaves many standout creatures open, such as stone giants, large dinosaurs, the lava ooze, and many others. The sheer number of choices also makes it a great utility spell. We don't have the right spell memorized for everybody to be able to fly across this canyon, but you know what I can do? Gotta create normal monsters. Let's make a bunch of Pegasus and let's all fly over. Or got a creature there that's pretty much immune to magic. Caster's not good against it. Make a big beast. Let that do the fighting for the caster. There's a lot of uses for it. Next up, bane of players everywhere, the Delayed Blast Fireball. Now, what you got here is this spell creates a little gem with a timer on it that when it goes off, the gem explodes as a standard fireball. So you've got all your utility of the fireball combined with the fact the caster can be long gone when it goes off. In Rule Cyclopedia, the delay can be set for up to 60 rounds. And Rule Cyclopedia uses short rounds, not the long rounds of AD&D, so it's not an hour, it's like a tenth of that. But still, 6 minutes is enough time for that caster to cast the spell in secret, pick the gem up, just casually drop it into a potted plant and walk away calmly. And be 5 solid minutes away when that fireball goes off. There'll be no connection between him and when it went off. Or you can also make multiple castings, all set to go off at the same time. Next up, Magic Door. This creates an invisible doorway that can only be used by the caster, and the spell persists until the doorway has been used 7 times. This should be an essential part of the general defense program of any tower or fortress of any archmage. And since it lasts until it's been used 7 times, the caster can create multiple castings to create things like escape tunnels and mazes loaded with these magic doors, in which he can navigate at full running speed, while his enemies are going to have to detect magic to find each door and then still break through the wall. But that's not the only use for the spell. If you got this spell, you're going to be planting these things all over the place, just for future use and various back doors. Say you meet the king once, you might plant a few of these on your way out. To get right in and get to him. King might not even your enemy, but you might need access to him immediately. You've left these doors around, you can drop right into his bedchamber, wake him up and be like, Jarl, we gotta talk. Or decide maybe you want access to the treasury later, just in case maybe you need it. Whatever, you can leave these things everywhere. Next up, Mass Invisibility. This spell is a wide-range invisibility spell. It can make up to 300 men or 6 dragon-sized creatures invisible until they attack or cast a spell. It's a decent effect, but The unstated use for it is even better. Don't make your own men invisible. Go into the marketplace in the enemy city or the enemy camp and make everyone there invisible instead. And watch everything, and listen to everything go nuts. Because the people, or whatever they are, they're not going to become visible unless they cast a spell or attack. Now, 99 people out of 100 can't cast a spell, so they don't become invisible until they attack someone. So you're going to have hundreds of invisible people or monsters all over the place, wreaking havoc on each other with no idea how to turn the effect off. Do that in an enemy city and watch their economy crash in a day. As people are stealing things left and right, people are boarding up their doors, no more business is getting done. You get the idea. And then you can keep repeating the effect if you want to. Next up, Power Word Stun. This will stun anyone with 70 hit points or less for a certain amount of time. The less hit points they have, the longer it'll stun them. But there's no saving throw to this effect. So that means in an Archmage duel, if you can get this spell off and there's nothing stopping it from affecting the other caster, you've won. At that point, your enemy is stunned. Do with him as you wish. Next up, Summon Object. Now, any wizard capable of casting spells at this level is probably going to own a lot of magic items. More than they can reasonably carry. He might have 6 different magic staffs. You can't carry 6 magic staffs. Or he'll have, even if he could, via bag of holding, do you really want 37 magic items in a bag of holding that could possibly be stolen or lost or ruptured? No, you're probably going to handpick your equipment for the job, but you can have everything important at home ready to be brought right to you without the risk of always having it, being able to be lost. Or there could be some items that are too dangerous to carry around until it's time to use them. Some artifacts could be like that. You don't really want to, maybe you don't want to carry around the Rod of 7 Parts with you all the time because you don't need the attention or whatever negative effects it'll have on you. But when you need to use it, bloop, here it comes. Next up is Teleport Any Object. I believe this also can show up with the name Teleport Without Error in other versions of the game. The teleporting of objects is really not that great. It's kind of stupid. It can't move a building or an entire sailing vessel. So really, what's the point? Anybody high enough level to this would have access to a bag of holding, and thus they can just fill it with whatever they want to and teleport anyway. But this allows the caster to teleport themselves without error, and that makes this a top tier spell. Because teleport is ruined by the fact that any caster who uses it frequently enough will eventually end up dead from appearing too low and being underground. Special mention for this level, the spell Lore, or Legend Lore, which appears at 6th to 7th level, depending on which version of the game. It is far too high of a level of a spell for identifying a magic item. For some reason, D&D started with the idea that identifying magic items should be hard, and that characters may be fighting with magic weapons and armor of unknown quantity, and they'd be trying to figure out their magic items via trial and error, and that was somehow fun gameplay because Gary Gygax read that in a novel somewhere. In fact, they imported that whole idea into both Metamorphosis Alpha and Gamma World in a huge way with charts and D100 rolls and everything else. But the fact is, it might have been fun gameplay the first time it happens to any individual person. After that, it's a complete waste of everyone's time at the table. There are treasure hoards in classic D&D with 15 magic items in them. How many sessions are you going to use trying to identify those via trial and error? That doesn't make any sense. So throw out the identifying as being useful because there's a first level spell that can do that. However, the spell does have the function of investigating distant mysteries, and that's super powerful. However, it takes 1d100 days to complete the investigation, and the wizard can't do anything of consequence during that time, can't cast any other spells, yada, yada, yada. So that makes it extremely limited in scope. Yep, we could learn the answer to this, maybe, But we're going to everybody has to turn off all their adventuring for up to a third of a year. We're not sure. All right, before we go to the next one, we're going to think about a concept. A really high-level wizard might very well keep multiple different names and identities, all with differences, appearances, allies, and so forth. Now, this could be made trivial by the shape-changing spells that are out there, but it's not even necessary. This is a medieval world. There are no cameras. There are no videos. People don't know what people look like all that much. You know, Winky Walinda, the Wizard of Oz, all he's got to do is shave his mustache, brush his hair a little bit different, and go to another city, and he can be whoever he wants. Especially since most mages aren't going to make themselves all that facially visible if they're smart anyway. But this allows a mage to do things in one identity that won't tarnish his other one. You know, maybe he's a neutral wizard or even a good one, but he's got to do that evil or not so popular thing. You know, maybe it's to save the world. Maybe he actually has to kill the good princess to save the world for some reason. He doesn't want to do that under his own identity. Let one of his other identities do it. Or it can just be a series of backups, too. If things get too hot for the great Whizbang, then he can drop that identity entirely, spread the rumors of the Whizbang's death, and if the Whizbang is, you know, so notorious that people hate him, he can take credit for it from one of his other forms. The wizard could even use powerful shape-changing magic to maintain a monster identity two just in case, you know. Could also just make himself a fire giant for a while, every once in a while, keep up with the clan, pretend he belongs to another clan and he's just visiting, and if he just needs to hide or have a bunch of fire giants on his side, he's already got that set up. All right, let's look at our 8th level spells. Create magical monsters. This is a swift army knife of spells, able to create monsters with up to 2 special abilities and with up to the caster's level and hit dice. This includes all the giants and a huge number of monsters with save or die abilities. This can also be used to create permanent various golems, but the additional cost to do so is probably not a great value to most wizards. Just not worth it. Next up, Force Field. Penetrable force field in one of several different shapes that lasts for an entire hour. This is useful both offensively and defensively, and the best part is there's no savings throw against the effect. Somebody chasing you, force field. Now you get an hour. To get away. Or you come up to your rival, your great foe. He's got a bunch of his friends with him. Use that force field in a nice dome. Take most of the friends out of the fight. You got no beef with them anyway. And just concentrate on your real target. Or, somebody chasing you down a corridor. Force field behind you. Now you've got an hour to get away. Mass Charm. Mass Charm is a mass problem solver. This can affect up to 30 hit dice worth of creatures at once, and those creatures have a -2 on their saving throw against it. Now, this is actually most effectively used in charming large groups of normies. That -2 on their saving throw, I believe, means in most versions of the game that they need a 20 to make that save. Not as good as against single powerful creatures, because they might well make their saving throw, and you can charm them with spells that are much lower level. But charming 30 normies at once, walk into the front door of a place, suddenly everybody there is your best friend. You can accomplish whatever you need to with the help of those friends. Next up, Mind Barrier. This prevents any sort of ESP, clairvoyance, crystal balls, or other kind of mental effects, spying or scrying upon the wizard or looking through his eyes or anything like that. And it gives a +8 save bonus against charms, illusions, phantasms, feeble minds, and similar mind-affecting spells like that. And it lasts for 1 hour per level of the caster. Now, any true archmages will likely keep this spell active at all times as soon as they're able to do so. Otherwise, it's not worth casting unless you think something's happening if you can't keep it up at all times, because otherwise your people who are trying to scry on you, they'll just keep trying until the spell's not up. But if you can keep it up at all times, then they can never do it. A really high-level wizard, like, a 34th level wizard in basic D&D, they might keep the spell active on all their companions at all times as well, not just themselves. Next up, Permanence. This is one of those spells that's going to help a high-level caster sleep at night. It can be used to make most spells of 7th level or less permanent. Any single item or area can have one permanent effect at a time, and any creature can have 2 of them. With this spell, the caster can make his fortress truly impregnable. Permanent magical effects all over the place. Or, also, in addition to that, you can have, 2 permanent spells in yourself. Things like shield are good if the other wizards in your cabal tend to use magic missile assassinations, because shield stops that. Protection from normal missiles is one that almost any wizard might want permanent on themselves. Protection from evil, 10-foot radius, keeps those invisible stalkers away. Haste, really better on warriors, but you can put it on your warrior friend, because wizards don't get multiple spells just because they're hasted. Fly, detect invisible, and so on. You can permanently just permanent until dispelled. Next up, polymorph any object. Can, in theory, turn anything into anything else up to a 10 by 10 by 10 foot size limit. This can obviously defeat a creature with although they do get a saving throw, but they do make it at -4. Now, there's no single thing this spell can do that is worth an 8th level spell slot. However, the vast amount of things it can do means that very high level spellcasters will probably keep a copy of this spell in memory at all times. Right, next up, travel. This is an incredibly useful mass fly spell. You can also use to travel between dimensions. And at least in your basic D&D, any caster high enough level to cast this spell can get to anywhere on the old Great Wheel cosmology of D&D during the duration of the spell. Might have to cast it again to get back, but that's another thing. A couple of honorable mentions. Symbol. This creates one of many magical traps that go off if read, or if the object there is untouched. This is only honorable mention because the caster doesn't appear to be immune to their own symbols. So you're really laying these around as landmines, and then you can't go anywhere near them yourself. Also, there's dance or Otto's irresistible dance, or I think just irresistible dance, depending on which version of the game you're playing. This can basically defeat a foe without a save, but the fact that the wizard has to touch the enemy knocks it down to an honorable mention. Do you want to get your high-level wizard close enough to touch anything that it would be casting an 8th level spell on? I wouldn't. Alright, finally, our highest level spells. 9th level. First off, best off, Contingency. This is the spell that lets high-level wizards sleep at night. This creates an automatic trigger that will cast another spell of 4th level or lower. And this trigger can be anything happening within 120 feet of the caster. This is the spell that keeps your archmages from being assassinated. But the caster can only have one contingent spell at a time, so he needs to figure out exactly what he wants to happen. Some common ones will be like Dimension Door, things like that. Next up, create any monster. This is the true Swiss Army knife of spells. It can create any monster that the wizard has studied up to his level and hit dice. And studied means that the wizard has either been able to study the dead body of the monster or study the living monster for 1 hour. And any wizard getting up there in levels is going to start studying monsters. But here's the thing. This spell does not care about the number of special abilities or the strength of them. And the creature lasts for up to a half hour in duration. This can create things like beholders, monsters who have their own high-level spellcasting abilities, basically anything other than humans and demi-humans. If you think hard enough, you can solve almost any problem with that spell, unless the problem takes more than a half hour to solve. The heal spell doesn't pop up until 9th level, but at that point, the Archmage doesn't need to keep any clerics around who might, be following their god before they're following the Archmage. He can now heal, remove curse, neutralize poison, cure blindness, and remove feeble minds all by himself. He doesn't need that cleric anymore. Immunity. This spell gives total immunity to 1st to 3rd level spells, and half effect from 4th and 5th level spells, immunity to all missiles, normal weapons, and half damage from magic weapons. And the caster can drop the protection temporarily to get healing or similar. And this lasts for 10 minutes per level of the caster. So by the time you're high enough level to cast this, it's going to last a couple of hours. This is the sort of spell that would allow a single wizard to stand before an army of thousands with zero fear. Next up, Shape Change. Caster can change basically into any monster they want. However, they can only continue to cast spells in bipedal humanoid forms. So basically, you're going to want to keep becoming giants. And this is another one of those spells that can solve almost any problem if the caster just selects the right form. I think I'd prefer the create any monster over this, because then you've got two creatures, yourself and that monster, instead of just one. And finally, in the real bangers, Time Stop. The wizard gets himself 1d4 plus 1 rounds to either escape a fight or prepare for one. A really high-level wizard can even stack a few of these up. You know, cast a Time Stop the last round of your Time Stop, have some more Time Stop for yourself. A Time Stop that's gotten off can often just be a win for the character. Now, when you're in your Time Stop, you can't hurt anybody or anything else, but you can stack more spells up on yourself, and you can cast spells that have durations, and then those spells will start taking into effect when the Time Stop runs off. Okay, we've got a few honorable mentions here. Power Word Kill. Instantly kill or stun up to 100 hit points worth of creatures. Only mages and those who can cast mage spells get a save, which is at -4. This is way overpowered for fighting normal bad guys, and it's not good on wizards, or anything that would be threatening a wizard this powerful, so it's not a great spell. Meteor Swarm. It is the largest damage-dealing spell in the game in most versions, but by the time you can cast 9th level spells, you can be doing so much more than rolling a bunch of d6s for damage. Come on. There's Prismatic Wall. If you want to trap somebody in a sphere or create a wall between you and a foe, and you want to do it with style, when you cast Prismatic Wall, it has 7 different layers that can each be negated by a different spell, which do different effects to anyone trying to pass through them. However, against any intelligent foe, Force Field solves the same problem. This has to have been a Gary Gygax thing. Finally, Wish. Now, in your Back Me here, Wish can't be cast unless the character is 36th level and has maximum intelligence. However, once the character gets to that level and has a spell, it's only a matter of time before all their ability scores are 18 via safe castings of the spell. And then might as well make all your companions have all 18s as well. This is not actually as powerful as it seems, though. The ability scores of a 36th level character, they're not of that much importance anymore. Your 36th level fighter with a 10 strength, your 36th level fighter with an 18 strength, there is almost no different. The equipment they have, the difference in the equipment they have will be more important than the difference in their strength score. And in Back Me, there's no real cost to the user for the Wish spell, as long as it's used for safe effects. Other versions of the game always come with drawbacks that keep the spell from being the greatest. In addition to the Wish wanting to be turned against the user, in AD&D you have immediate weakness requiring bed rest. AD&D 2nd edition kept that, added 5 years of permanent aging. 3rd edition came with a massive loss of experience. So really, there's very few versions of the game in which you would want to cast this spell, other than Back Me, and it only shows up in the very end game in Back Me, which is why Wish spell, the greatest spell in the game, is only an honorable mention. Wow, I think this may be the single longest video I have ever made on any of my channels. So thanks for watching it all to the end. If you made it this far, please hit the subscribe. Remember, I am always buying RPG and tabletop gaming stuff. Find me on Instagram if you want to unload your collection. Thanks, and I hope to see you again soon.